It's Wake Up Worlds Groups, Day 8. Group D is complete. Top Esports and DRX qualify into playoffs. NA's final hope dies as FlyQuest are eliminated from Worlds 2020. What's next for FQ? Where do they go from here? And what can be done to improve NA as a whole?
Right back into the fight, looking for the kill on to Ignar off to the left. He's able to find it. He's able to grab the kill on to Santorin, and Doran picks up another. FlyQuest is destroyed. Saved by Mikhail's Crucible. 3-6-9 coming in from the side. Oh my goodness gracious, that damage. 1 versus 4 in the back line. 3-6-9. But Doran is just eating that whole calling. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Oh baby, we got ourselves a winner. DRX with the double kill on the jungler.
Hammer pulled in and snared by the trap. It's clean play, but it's not nearly enough because it's Solo on the backside. Solo looking for redemption, and TES getting torn to pieces. FlyQuest, where were you in week 1? TES are going to get this mid lane tower. It looks like never mind. Nice stun. He has shown up, and now the follow, the blast immediate from Jackie Love, and just like that, the game explodes. Knight with a clean shockwave, clean follow from Carson.
Day 14 of the World Championship is in the books, and we're here to break it all down. It's Wake Up Worlds. Welcome one, welcome all to Wake Up Worlds, our daily ESPN Esports Worlds 2020 program. Tyler and Arda with you every step of the way until a world champion is crowned on Halloween. Thank you so much for joining us live. Very spooky indeed on Twitch and on YouTube. And now the groups have been decided. It's been a journey so far. We've been with you. Thank you for joining us. And now we know exactly how the playoffs will shake down. We're going to talk about it and more. And if you are a fan of NA, if you're a fan of FlyQuest or TSM or Team Liquid or even any of the other teams in the LCS, later on in the show, we promise you we're going to give you a full postmortem. We're going to dive into FlyQuest, but also NA as a region. That's going to be a very long discussion. But Tyler, we should give some props to the teams that did advance out of Group D and the ones that everyone expected to advance out of Group D. Really top Esports and DRX out of their respective 3 games, Tyler. Anything surprise you? Anything dissuade you or impress you as they move on to the quarters?
Obviously, both teams had falters today. I mean, top Esports versus FlyQuest, and we'll get into that a bit later with the FlyQuest segment. A bit of a funky draft that went sideways for them there. They bounced back in the DRX series in a war of attrition, Arda. And a war of attrition, the latest first blood in World Championship history, a 0-0 deadlock for, I believe, 23 minutes or so before finally a DRX gets a bit too cute to save their mid lane tower. They stick around way too long. Everything's blown off them. They have no ultimates, and they get caught by a 3K shockwave from Knight to kind of turn the tides, and TES didn't let up from there. But overall, the 2 best teams from this group did advance. I do wish we saw a bit more of the FlyQuest we saw today with Ignore and Blitzcrank, one of his favorite champions. We saw all the way back in 2017 in China when his Blitzcrank pick almost got Misfits to the top 4 of Worlds. I would have loved to see him bust it out a bit sooner before they were actually eliminated. But I think overall, both teams should be happy with their results. I think TES, I don't think we've seen the best of TES. I think, obviously, we'll get into this more later when we get to the actual playoff segment of previewing, who they're facing off with. But I don't know about TES in this meta. TES is a team that when I was watching them in China and doing prep for the World Championship and talking to LPL experts, Emily Rand, and some of the casters over there, their main thing is TES is at their best when Karsa is enabling their laners, when it's Knight with the ball in his hands, when it's 369 with the ball in his hands, when it's the bot lane, Jackie Love carrying the game. This meta is a lot more about the laners enabling the jungler. It's the jungler a lot of times who is the sole focus point, the guy getting the kills, the guy carrying the game. And it's not that Karsa can't carry the game. Karsa is an adept carry jungler. He can play these champions well, but I don't think that is his strongest suit. I think he's more intelligent than he is brawn. He is a player that helps his laners carry. And I think this meta where he is the sole, one of these sole players playing that hard carry role, and you have Knight play more supportively, I think that's a bit awkward for TES, where I really would want to see, Knight being the hard carry and Carson enabling him, it being a bit of a backwards, kind of situation. I think TES doesn't look as strong as I saw them in the regular season in the LPL. And I do think they have a bit of weaknesses in that, Carson having to carry role that a team like Fnatic, who they've played in the playoffs, might be able to exploit. But we'll get into that a bit later. And I think for DRX, Piosik, your boy Piosik Arda, he had an excellent group stage. One of the best junglers in the tournament. Even in defeat, his Kindred is still a sight to behold. Doran was a lot better than I expected. Deft and Kyria getting back into the form after having a bit of a slump to end the 2020 regular season in Korea. But it's a very similar situation to TES, where Chovy on the Galio. I don't want to see Chovy on the Galio. I want to see Chovy actually carrying a game. I want him to be not just a side piece, but the main piece. And that is my question with DRX and TES, is these two teams with possibly the two best players in the world, both, superstar mid laners, they are more so relying on their junglers to carry while the mid laners are enabling them. And I don't think we're seeing the top DRX or the top TES, because their roles are kind of switched at the moment. So both teams should be proud of what they did. It's going to be interesting to see how far they can go in the bracket stage, especially if this meta continues to hold, because I'd like to see, there's always a chance of a meta flip in the next, few days where teams have off. We might see different picks come out. But I want to see, even in a meta where, Piosik is doing great carrying, I want to see Chovy on a pick where he can win lane and he can influence by his own mean instead of having to play Galio. And we've seen a lot of Galio games this tournament so far that have not worked out.
So we will talk about this near the end of the show, but just to catch everybody up in case you hadn't heard, Top Esports versus Fnatic, Suning versus JD Gaming, Gen G versus G2, and Damwon versus DRX. Those are your quarterfinals. We're going to hold our predictions until we get to the end of the show. One thing I do want to mention here before we move on is we're obviously going to talk about the FlyQuest victory over Top Esports from the FlyQuest point of view a little bit later on. But correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler. Looking at it from the Top Esports point of view, I'm not concerned. If I'm Top Esports, okay, FlyQuest beat us. But, I don't think, if you play that game 100 times, Top Esports wins, 90, 95 times, maybe?
With that draft?
Not draft. No. I'm saying the whole thing. The draft is not in their favor. I'm saying if they played the entire thing, not the draft 100 times. I mean the entire game, including a redraft.
Yes.
What I do think is, I don't think it's concerning. I think it looks great for FlyQuest. For Airport FlyQuest, I should specify there, but I'm not as concerned. I'm not suddenly not saying that TES aren't the favorites going into the playoffs. I see it as a stumble, sure, but not a massive one. Oh boy, there's cracks in the armor now. There's a little concern here with TES. Maybe we shouldn't make them the favorites anymore. I'm not thinking like that due to this loss. Looking at it from the Top Esports side of things, what do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think there is another gear to still be, propped up. There's another gear to be had with TES. I don't think we've seen them at 100%. I think we saw a bit more of it against DRX, where they played a much safer game, and we saw them kind of just flip that switch with, the Orianna Ultimate that kind of just turned the game sideways for DRX, and TES kind of led from there. I'm still kind of concerned about, having Knight be a side character more than the main character, Karsa being the main carry, because I don't know if Karsa, when we look at, the junglers left in the tournament, and you have SOFM, that name always gets me. Can I just call him, Sopham? It's much easier.
Style of me. Great abbreviation. But, you look at, Style of Me. You look at Self-Made. You look at even Piosik, who's popping off by himself. You have Canyon, who might be the best jungler in the world. Kanavi, another guy who said he would be another jungler in the world. Karsa is a guy who is smart, he's intelligent, he's brainy, he knows how to, he's excellent jungle pathing, as Emily Rand, our colleague, loves to bring up on multiple times when you bring up Karsa.
I don't know if he can be that punch, that the core of the core carry of a team that wins the world championship with so many killer junglers still left. And he might prove me wrong. He probably will prove me wrong. But I do think for TES to win, Knight can't be a side character. He has to have a bigger role in their games coming up. And when you look at the Fnatic matchup, and we'll dive into a bit more earlier, like him versus Nemesis. Nemesis has had a really good tournament, and he's great at enabling self-weighting. And that's why I think there's maybe a possibility of Fnatic upset here. But if Knight gets his way and they play more through Knight, I really do see like TS is unstoppable if they can have their lane set up and Karsa is enabling them. So even backwards, even with Karsa being the carry and the laners playing through him, they still got the number one place and only lost to FlyQuest in a wonky draft that if they probably pick a bit more smarter, a bit more patiently, they probably win that too. So there's not a lot to really harp on when it comes to top esports. They're still one of the favorites to win the world championship. I still think it's them, G2, Damwon, and JD Gaming for me. I think one of those 4 teams will lift the Summer's Cup.
And all of them have moved on, and we will see them in the quarterfinals. 83% of you, by the way, predicted that Top Esports would win Group D. Good for you. Golf clap. Well done.
Wow, what a limb there. Got on a limb.
You did it. The 0.2% that picked FlyQuest, though, I'm just kidding. I actually don't know if that's a stat. ESPN.com/League of Legends Predictor. It's totally free to join and play along. You can invite your friends, create custom groups. Also, if you have the ESPN Fantasy app, you can click on the trophy and play along as well. It will pick up again as we get into the quarterfinals, so keep checking back to make your picks. Don't let your picks go away because they do lock in after a certain time. I made that mistake, which is why I was in the thousands for a while. Let's move on to FlyQuest, Tyler. Let's move on to FlyQuest. Let's talk about FlyQuest and their performance specifically at Worlds before we move on to the general NA conversation and tie a bow on NA on the world stage. So, FlyQuest went 1-4 when it mattered, and they went 2-0 on their way to the airport. Now, I don't want to dismiss at all their impressive victories near the end of their run, okay? I am not taking away too much from their impressive showing against Top Esports. What I do need to say, and I think that it's a little bit lost here, is that there is a massive difference between playing games that have weight to you qualifying for the playoffs and having that weight completely off your shoulders and playing for pride. Those are two completely different scenarios. So in my opinion, Tyler, what FlyQuest showed is that there are scenarios in which the best teams in the world can be defeated by NA teams. We've seen it in the past. You've seen it live in the past, and we saw it here again. Okay? Totally understand. But just remember the circumstances, because this would have been even a lower probability, very likely, if both these teams were battling for playoff spots. And remember, Top Esports were already secured, FlyQuest were already out. In a situation like that, the mental state of both of those teams' players are completely different. With that said, I'm happy that FlyQuest was the team to get this victory. I am. They got the first victory for NA at Worlds, Tyler. They got a victory against one of the overwhelming tournament favorites, so good on them.
Yeah, in a World Championship scenario, generally the only team that gets to celebrate last, most of these teams are going to end up losing their last game where, FlyQuest got out of the World Championship with a win. They left on a victorious note. They had an honorable Warriors death, as I saw Captain Flowers tweet to Santorin after they beat, TES and Unicorns of Love. It was an honorable Warriors death. And I do agree that we have to look at this in context, right? In terms of FlyQuest as a team, applaud them to no end. They played really well as a team. Even in their losses, I thought they looked good in almost every single game. There was not one game, maybe outside of the DRX game today. Outside of that one, though, I think they looked good or had positive showings in every game. And that includes the first TES game where even when they were down 8K gold, they were still winning team fights, which they had no business doing. And I think today versus TES, obviously TES with the wonky draft, as we brought up before, the Urgot in top lane. But, it doesn't matter what they pick. Like, you have to go out there and win the game. And I think, putting putting Ignar on his signature blitzcrank and having him be, active from second one was a brilliant move. And with the freedom of, not having to worry about a win or lose situation, you just have there and go have fun, play your game. That was the best pick possible. And I liked how they put Solo on a comfort pick where he actually could win lane on Gnar. And as we saw, when he actually put him on a champion that doesn't get rolled in lane, he can actually do quite well. And he actually overall, this is actually might be surprising. This is going to shock you, Arda. In terms of top laners, Solo had the third best CS differential at 10 minutes. Solo.
Worlds entirely or group?
Yeah. No,
all of Worlds.
In top lane. He was the third best top laner.
Wow.
He was the third best top laner when it came to laning, CS differential-wise. And he actually did really well in lane when he almost got zero attention from Santorin. Santorin was always around mid lane or bot lane. Almost no roaming up top. And yeah, Solo did have some of his, tilting moments, especially game 1 versus TES, which we went over quite well. And that molded me to no end when he died level 3 to a level 4 Camille. That was great. But overall, I think Solo actually had a solid tournament. He didn't get a lot of attention. He got the direst treatment of where the North American team just kind of leaves their top laner to die and soak up pressure and just tries to survive in the top lane, and everyone else tries to carry through the other lanes. But I think overall, every single player of FlyQuest had a magnificent tournament in some way, shape, or form, and especially Power of Evil. If there is one player to actually give a applause to, it is Power of Evil. Him and Core JJ can share, NA honors of, the German and the South Korean, obviously, the best two players for North America at Worlds. But
how
those
fitting
two,
is that?
How fitting was the German and the South Korean are the best players for North America at Worlds 2020. But Power Evil was in a group with Knight and Chovy, the two best players, in my opinion, in the world, and he did not look out of place at all. He did not look like a player that was from a NA late league. He looked like a player that if you took the nameplates off and you went through all these games, you would say, that Power of Evil guy he's right up there with Chovy and Knight. He has the skill to be one of the best mid laners in the world. And he was in the games the games that FlyQuest won this tournament, he dominated. He dominated No Man's in both games they played. No Man's who, dominated the playing stage. We were talking about how great No Man's was in the playing stage. Him, just styling on every single mid laner in play-ins, emoting, being so arrogant, just kind of like dunking on everyone he played. And then he plays against Knight, Chovy, and Power of Evil, and No Man's gets thrown in the dumpster over and over and over and over again. And Power of Evil really showed that he is that caliber of player. He came to this tournament, and when everyone's eyes were on Bjergsen, and I will take the L here, I will take the giant L on saying, Bjergsen's the mid laner to watch from LCS. Oh, Bjergsen's a top 20 player at Worlds. Please meme me for that. I was wrong. The player that comes out of this World Championship, and even you can even extend this to Jensen possibly, because Jensen as well had a very good tournament. When you come look at his stats, it's right up there with the best players in the group stage. Out of this tournament, I think you could say Power of Evil is a world-class player. He is a player that next year at Worlds, if he's coming back, he is a player that no one can look down on. He is a player that every single team will have to mark. And we saw by the end of the tournament in this group stage, everyone was trying to ban him out. They were trying to ban out Syndra. They were trying to suppress him, and he would just pick up the Vayne. He would pick up all these different kind of champions, the Azir, and he made it work. So Power of Evil, most of all of everyone on FlyQuest, he really came to this tournament looking far better than he did coming in. And I don't think it wasn't a thing of people thought Power of Evil was a bad player. I think everyone always respected Power of Evil. But I think after leaving this tournament, there's a different kind of aura around him. I think he goes back to LCS next year, and I think he has to be considered one of the best players in the league. He had a phenomenal tournament. Just hats off to Tristan. He deserves all the love given to him because he played like a world-class player against the two best players, in my opinion, in the world.
And we'll get to what happens to FlyQuest next in just a second. But I do want to give a shout out. In fact, all of NA would like to give a shout out to Unicorns of Love for not leaving TSM as winners at Worlds. So thank you, Unicorns of Love. You truly are unicorns and unique and one of a kind.
It was fun. It was fun hyping them up for a few days. Remember the playing stage? Like, oh man, the swagger, the bad boy swagger of Unicorns of Love. What can they do in the the group stages? Oh, they're gonna show no fear against Chovy and Knight, and they got smashed. I mean, they showed no fear, but they got smashed over and over and over again. And I think for Unicorns of Love, I think they go back into the drawing board. And I still really like their team, and I think they still haven't hit their ceiling yet. They still can clean up their play a lot more. So Unicorns of Love going into next year, I think they'll dominate LCL again because LCL is the CIS region is one of the weaker ones, I think, depth-wise. I think they go back to the LCL, and I hope they can scrim more against LEC teams because I think it's all about practice and getting those rips in against those top teams. I think for Unicorns of Love, I would guarantee that they learn more in these last 6 games than they did in the entire year playing LCL teams. So I hope they go back to the drawing board. They practice against better teams in the LEC. I think they've earned the right. I hope teams in the LEC see that they are a team that should be trained against. And I hope next year, 2021, if they can make Worlds again, they probably will because, Russia's a pretty shallow region, that they come back in, they can make groups again, and they can show a better performance.
So how does FlyQuest – let me rephrase. Where does FlyQuest go from here? Are there improvements to be made? How do we look at this roster now? That's always a question that's going to come up after – an NA team in particular bows out at Worlds. The only contract that's up is Santorin. His contract is up in November. He is a free agent unless an announcement comes before that. Everybody else is signed beyond this season. So obviously trades can happen, whatever the case may be. But when you look at this roster, their performance at Worlds and just NA in general, we have to also factor in that they were the most consistent team in the LCS all year. Right? 2 grand finals appearances in spring and summer, top three placements in regular season in spring and summer. They were the most consistent team across the board in the LCS across both splits. Is that enough with a group stage bow out going 3-3, 2 of those wins coming when it didn't matter? What do you do if you're FlyQuest GM, Tyler?
All right, so let's play this together. We'll play this together, Arda. We're GMs. We're in the room. We're discussing okay, what would she do? We decide Power Evil to like a 12-year contract, right? We just lock him down, like Power Evil.
Just throwing money at him.
Well, let's just lock you down, buddy. That's like you are the core of the team. Like you're the ace of the team. Let's build around Power Evil for the future, right? Okay. I think Tristan has shown that he is committed to North America. I've heard no issues from any of his teams. He's a hard worker. When we look at, we're going to talk about this later, as the overall North American issues of importing and scouting, and some players coming for money, some players coming here to actually improve the region and improve as a player. I think Tristan is a player who's shown time and time again that he really does care about getting to Worlds and doing well at Worlds. So I would be fine locking up Tristan.
Does he become a resident? Does he become a resident this year? How does that he's been in NA for a while now, since 2017, right? Does he get his residency at some point?
I think it's another year. So okay, that also helps in his favor, right? He's a year away from becoming a resident. Lockdown Power Evil. There's no reason to even Jensen's a free agent, but Power Evil showed he's just as good as Jensen in this tournament, and I think you don't want to shake something that's bad. So
we're keeping Power of Evil. PoE is not going anywhere. Not down with PoE. Yeah, you know me. Got it.
Yeah,
cool.
Got it.
Top lane solo.
That's the spot where I think a lot of people are going to be pointing to and saying, if you're going to change something on FlyQuest, it would have to be solo.
Why I was asking was because who is available right now is the top laner for Supermassive.
Armu.
Yeah, but FlyQuest already have 2 imports, and that's why I was asking about PoE. I didn't know. So if PoE and Ignar are still imports, then that wouldn't be possible.
I think there's enough top lane talent in North America. There's Fudge for C9 Academy. Now he's a resident because the old OPL's dead. Everyone, all the Australian and New Zealanders are now NA players. So Fudge would not count as an import. I think Fudge if you brought in Fudge, he would be an upgrade. And I think, again, I think Solo deserves a chance to start. Like, I think you keep Solo. He's a smart player. He's a veteran. I think worst case scenario, he becomes a six man. And you work him in if a younger player and have him learn from Solo, or you move him back to a positional coach, because that's the crazy thing, right? Like, Solo came to FlyQuest as a coach. He was not supposed to be a player. Viper was the starter. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to be an assistant coach, and it just worked into his favor that he got got a chance to play, and they looked better with him, and then they just wrote it out. So I think top lane is a position you would want to strengthen. I think Solo is a good team fighter. I think he's a solid laner. I think he's solid all around. But if you want to take the next step as FlyQuest, I think you might want to bring in a younger player to, have him compete for the starting job, or have Solo be the sixth man and learn from him. So I think there was Fudge. I think Fake God. Fake God has improved a lot on 100 Thieves Academy. He did not look the greatest when he was in the LCS, but again, as someone, I remember I profiled Fake God at the scouting grounds 2 years ago, and this was a kid who was like low diamond before he went to scouting. Like, he was a super scholar. Like, his parents had him doing like cram school, all that. So he had never had time to play League of Legends. He really wasn't a big League of Legends player until he had a summer off from going into college. He finally didn't have to go to cram school. He actually had he was a kid for once. And he got time to play. And from that summer, he went from like low diamond to like challenger. And he's really a freak of nature when it comes to potential. And I think Fake God's a player that I think if he gets another starting job in the LCS, he has a chance to become, a Licorice style player where he can grow into being one of the best players in the top lane role. So Fake God, there's Fudge, Tenacity. I think there's a few players out there in the top lane that if FlyQuest wants to make a big move, they could. And I think the top lane pool isn't as dried up as previous years. I think there's a lot of talent in the academy in the top lane. So yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if FlyQuest jumped on one of those players.
And I'll be honest, I don't know too much about FlyQuest Academy team, but their top laner Revenge is signed until 2021.
Revenge is also another. Revenge used to be like the number one NA prospect back in the day. He was like this, everyone was like, oh, when is Revenge going to go pro? And then Revenge announced that he was going to go into being a surgeon, from what I remember. He was going to quit. He was going to quit playing League of Legends to become a surgeon. And obviously he came back to League of Legends. Now he is, a pro player. So yeah, Revenge is another player where if you want us, play around the youth, play around, a newer talent, Revenge is also a player. Like, there's a lot of young top laners in NA that I think FlyQuest could bring up. And I don't think this is a position of like just kick out Solo, because I think Solo proved that he went 3-3 at Worlds against, guys like 369, Doran, Boss, like not slouches, especially 369. So I think he's earned a chance to compete for a spot. And in worst case scenario, he's a great mentor and he's a great coach for the team. So I do think, though, that you can bolster the top lane a little.
So let's talk bot lane now. Ignar, probably a lock, right? Like, we're not moving Ignar. Now, here's the thing with the bot lane. We have Wild Turtle. He's signed until 2022. Mash is up. So, and we did see them switch back and forth a little bit. So Wild Turtle did get some time in FlyQuest Academy in the summer split to work on a few things, and then did come back and was deemed to be improved. So he stayed on the team. He is a seasoned veteran. Mash has some years too, but like, what about that bot lane? Do we stick with Wild Turtle? Do we do the Mash Wild Turtle combination again, or do we look elsewhere?
Well, I think one of the spiciest things we can probably bring up about the bot lane is that during the spring to summer offseason, FlyQuest was one of the leading teams for Doublelift. Aside from TSM, I believe Jacob Wolf reported that FlyQuest was right up there as a team that really wanted Doublelift. Mr. Doublelift is now a free agent. Coming out of this tournament, but like, we can even ask chat, like, right now, if you were going to pick between Wild Turtle and Doublelift, would you trust more? Like,
oh my word!
Oh
boy!
Like, who would you want right now, Wild Turtle or Doublelift, after watching both their performances at Worlds? And I don't think again, not bot centric meta, not a meta where you're exactly. Apparently, from my producers telling me that Doublelift signed a 2-year contract, so. Again, Yeah,
there could be trades. I mean,
oh
especially
yeah,
after Worlds, there could
0-6.
absolutely be trades. We don't know necessarily if I believe that he did sign a contract to stay with TSM. I think it was back in April. So, but here's the thing, though. I mean, whether his contract is up or not.
I mean, he was a contract. He had a contract with Team Liquid.
Matter.
We saw what. Yeah, the contracts don't matter.
It doesn't matter. Like the thing is that trades can happen. I think the more general question we should ask here is, who do you think that FlyQuest will make a change at AD carry? I think that's the question.
I don't think so. I think Wild Turtle proved himself at this World Championship, especially in the last 2 games. And he also is like. I think Tristan, Power of Evil is the ace of the team, the core that you build around. But I think the face of the franchise is Wild Turtle. I mean, I remember last year, FlyQuest sent reporters to the World Championship, and it was like the 3 main big, English-speaking reporting outlets at Worlds 2019 were ESPN, me, and Emily Rand. It was Travis Gafford Industries, Travis Gafford, Broden Plett, the TGI guys, and Travis, and the third was FlyQuest, and you know who the reporter was at the World Championship, Arda?
Who?
Wild Turtle. They sent Wild Turtle as the reporter to do interviews at the World Championship. He is FlyQuest. Amazing. He is the guy who does a little bit of everything for the brand. I think he is an amazing guy. I think he's someone who is really easy to play with. He's flexible. He's a player that doesn't get too down on himself. He's a hard worker. I think, again, they try to mash this split, and then Mash had a really good academy stats, and he was really doing well in scrim, so they brought in Mash. But Wild Turtle won his spot there. I think at the World Championship, he performed well. And, he always had this stigma against him of that he's too wild. He's too flash happy. He tries to make too big of a play. He always looks a bit too silly. And he had some of those moments at the World Championship, but those moments also turned out to be some of the best moments for FlyQuest. And overall, I think he was solid. Nothing to write home about. He wasn't the star of the team. That was Power of Evil. I think even Ignar and Santorin had some bigger moments, but he performed well in lane. He got some solo lane kills. He almost solo lane killed in the first game versus TES. Wild Turtle is synonymous with me for FlyQuest. So
yeah, he's an identity guy, right? He's an identity guy.
I keep the bottom lane the same. I think Wild Turtle has earned it. Again, it could be a situation where you want to bring in a younger talent. If you want to bring a younger academy talent to maybe do a 7-man roster, an 8-man roster, where Wild Turtle's teaching the next generation, I think that's fine.
Like if there was a guy like Tactical, Tactical's obviously staying with Team Liquid, but imagine there was another Tactical type player that was available. I can see FlyQuest considering that.
I mean, there was Johnson, and both those guys were on TSM, and then they both left. And TSM.
Johnson, man, we haven't talked about Johnson in a while. Don't you have to dye your hair, by the way?
Yeah, we'll do that when quarantine's done. We'll dye.
I mean, there's so many things we've forgotten about over the months on Rift Rewind. But anyway, okay, so that's what we think in terms of FlyQuest. I honestly, if this team comes back exactly the same, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe Santorin only if he wants to go elsewhere.
Keep Santorin.
If they sign him, great. But if there's one team, well, maybe Team Liquid as well. But maybe what we should be saying is TSM is the one most likely to change from the teams at Worlds and NA. But yeah, I think FlyQuest can stay the same, and I think that not too many people would complain.
Yeah, add a young top laner, make maybe a 6-man roster with a young player competing with solo, have a mentor that young player, and I think you have a roster that could improve. And if you get a top laner who can carry the top lane, that just adds another dimension, another edge to FlyQuest. And you can't just ban out Power of Evil, right? Or focus solely on the bot lane. Like right now, FlyQuest play in a really rigid style of the main carry most of the time is going to be Power of Evil. Santorin's going to be around that mid lane. So if you could add another dimension in the top lane, add maybe another player. And I think they wanted to do that with Viper. Viper was supposed to be that hard carry, Riven player and kind of change the dynamic of FlyQuest, and that didn't work out. So I think adding another, hard carry style top laner to the roster to go along with Solo's experience and his kind of style as well. I think we've seen in the history of League of Legends, teams that have 2 different style top laners can often find success. We've seen it with IG, we've seen it with SKT. 2 top laner systems usually can work out more so than any other 6-man, 7-man roster. So I think FlyQuest is in a very good spot. And I think, again, applause to them. again, the airport buff memes and all that, but they had an honorable death. They went down, taking out TES, and I think before the tournament, no one would have thought they could have taken a game off those guys. So, lots of kudos to them.
Well, from the airplane buff to putting NA on airplane mode, let's talk about what went wrong for NA at Worlds. And now we're going to have a larger conversation about NA in general, on the world stage, what is happening stateside, and how it can improve. So we're not only going to discuss this, we're also going to offer some solutions, because the worst thing to do is to criticize and then not offer solutions. Who on earth would do that? Who on earth would do that on social media? Criticize and then not offer any ways to improve? No,
not this
never
guy.
happens.
Never. Not this guy.
Ever.
Never. I never complain on Twitter.
We're not gonna do that here. We're gonna talk, we're gonna analyze, we're gonna debate, we're gonna be fair, and then we're going to adjudicate and we're gonna offer solutions. So let's ask the question very deliberately, very directly, Tyler. What went wrong for NA? We saw the results. We saw the heartbreak and the disappointment and the teams going home after groups. It's happened before. It has happened again. It happened last year. We've seen success from NA, but it hasn't been as much as people would like. So what happened?
You want the honest answer? You want the honest, straight to, no BSing. Let's just be straight to it.
Absolutely.
Nothing went wrong for NA outside of, TSM just falling on their face. Nothing really went wrong for NA. NA, as I've said many times before, is the fourth best region. They are better than CIS. They're better than PCS. You can look at, you can talk about how it's a PCS region all you want. The facts show that NA is the fourth best region. They are middle of the road. They are the gatekeepers. They are the bridesmaids. They are the ones who get invited to the party but never actually get to have any bit of the fun. They are always the middleman in this entire equation of the world hierarchy in League of Legends. And if you want that to continue, it'll continue. If you look past at the last few Worlds, even when C9 does extremely well and they go far in the bracket, they usually go 4-2 in the group stage, 3-3. This year, again, 3-3 and 3-3. We had the outlier of TSM being absolutely an abomination. So congratulations to TSM on that. But generally, NA is a region that is always going to do middling. They are going to have a team or two go 3-3. If you're lucky, 4-2. A team that goes 2-4, and then maybe a team that just falls on their face. Like this 6-12 overall record for NA is par of the course. You're always going to have teams that perform pretty well because NA isn't an albatross of talent. Like it's not, this joke of a region. No matter how many times people want to make fun of it, it's a middling region. It's not. And if NA wants to continue being that, and you want to have those stories of C9 because it's going to happen when you have tournaments and you have talent like NA does have. There's going to be times where one or two of these teams does make a quarterfinal run, and maybe if the stars align and they get a good matchup like C9 did with Afrika back in 2018, they can make the semifinals, and we can all clap and hip hip hooray, and it's all great. But NA will never be a top region if they continue with how things are going. Recycling talent, playing with the same players, poor scouting, all of that jazz. If we want to continue with the status quo and just do the same things we've been doing for the last 5-6 years, next year we will send 3 teams to Worlds. One of them will go 3-3, probably losing a tiebreaker. One will go 2-4, maybe 3-3 if they're lucky and not make top 8. And then you'll have a team that goes 1-5 or 0-6, and we will have another middling discussion on this show, and we'll be talking about what went wrong. And really, nothing really went wrong for North America. This is the status quo. And at the end of it, early on, it did look like it would be a dumpster fire. It did look like maybe this would be the outlier year or the first year where it just fell to the bottom and you had a bottoming out. We would see it, the region go, 1-17, 2-16, and that might, shake up the core and really show, embarrass NA enough to, make a drastic change. But we went 6-12, and 2 teams went 3-3, and most of the attention is going to be put on TSM for just going 0-6 and laughing at them.
I don't like cheering for an 8-8 team, Tyler. I don't like cheering for a team that is consistently battling for playoff position, and on the last day of the regular season, they qualify for the playoffs, but then they fizzle out in the first round year after year after year, because that is the most dangerous position to be in all of competition. Why? Because if you're very good, it's easy to stay the same. If you're very bad, it's easy to improve and make decisions. But if you're on the bubble every single year, it is way more difficult to make fundamental changes and pull the trigger on them, because you are always in that vicinity. You always have this false sense of hope that you will improve. You look back at 2018 and say, whoa, C9 made the semifinals, people. Stop overreacting. And then we look at 2020 and we say, FlyQuest beat top esports, people. They won the Money in the Bank briefcase. Are you kidding me? They should have a title match against the eventual winners next year sometime. And these narratives are fun to talk about, and these narratives are great to meme on social media, but that doesn't get any true progress in the region, because we're always in that mode of thinking that it could get better the way that it is. And so that's what I'm wondering, is that this is a very dangerous situation to be in. And what I want to know is, it looks like that for me, who's someone who has really been covering this week over week for a year. But for you, who has seen this for several years, aren't you fed up with this by now?
Oh yeah, of course I'm fed up with it. And it's a situation where they just did enough, and they just did enough to not, burn down, right? Like, it did enough where you could make those tweets of we'll be back stronger next year, and people get a little bit excited about it. You already see it in social media where people are like, oh, FlyQuest went 3-3. Team Liquid did 3-3. That's great. Like, that's great for North America. They beat TES. They beat Suning. They beat G2. Let's all love at TSM. TSM's the issue. TSM's the problem. It's all TSM's fault. It's not North America's fault. It's TSM's fault. And to a degree, that is true. Like, we should applaud Team Liquid and FlyQuest for playing well in week 2, both of them going 2-1. If a few things change differently, maybe they make it out of the group stages. And TSM did, blow. Like, it's what was it, like a 6K, 7K gold lead to Genji, the 5-man sleep that turned into a 9-man sleep. Like, we have a lot to criticize about TSM, but overall, I agree. We are the 8-8 team. We are the team that's always going to be on the bubble. NA's never had a team that goes to Worlds and where everyone's like, oh, they're going to go 5-1. They're going to go 6-0. Or, like, most of the advancements, even when we make top 8, are 3-3 tiebreak wins, or a 4-2, and you beat the 2 lower seed teams, but you lose to an SKT. And C9's done that a few times, where they get into the same group as SKT, get smacked by the best team in the world, and they beat up on the lower seeds, and they beat a struggling, a topsy-turvy Chinese team who hasn't found their identity. And then everyone applauds it. It's like, yes, we did it. We're one of the top regions now. And it's these circumstances that, in context, it's far worse than it actually looks on paper, and and it's hard, right? Because you don't want to take away from the FlyQuest victory. You don't want to take away from a very good win, a marquee win for the franchise. That they beat top esports, a team that might very well be the world champions this year, but that doesn't make up for the entire region. It doesn't make up for the middling status of North America. And I say this perfectly clear, is that if nothing changes about North America and how the infrastructure is and how teams are built, we are going to send these teams every year, aside from some outliers that are going to go 2-4 and 3-3, 1-5, maybe even 0-6 if you're a TSM or a Clutch Gaming. But we're going to send middling teams, and we're going to have these, moral victories, because these teams aren't made of terrible players. Like, Power of Evil is a world-class player. Core JJ is a dang world champion. He's still one of the best supports in the world. Like, there's talent on these teams, but it's not going to get them over the hump unless you can bring in the next generation to lift up the region. Because you can't always.
Right.
We're on the 7th year of believing in Bjergsen. We're in the 7th year of saying Bjergsen can be the Western hope. And from the time we were talking about how, Bjergsen's the best mid laner ever, like the best Western mid laner, and how he can compete with Faker, and that storyline that's, gone to hell, Caps has already been to two finals, 1 MSI, and already between this time of like the single generation of players we've had in North America, Europe's had like 3. Europe, oh, like the thing with Europe and how they went from this middling status, because the European LCS and NALCS were very close at like the last, like in 2014, 2015, 2016. They are very similar. Like EU was as bad as North America, really, where it was really just everyone kind of looking up at Korea, and China and Europe have skyrocketed. And you've seen, the development leagues of both of those regions, grow, and you've seen so many new talents, blossom from those secondary leagues. And in North America, we're still in the same tropes we had 6 years ago. We're still trying to believe we're still believing in Doublelift and Bjergsen. That is who we're entrusting our entire future in, are 2 players of a core that we were cheering for 5 years ago and saying those are the guys who are going to bring North America a world title. And then by the time we're still doing that, Europe's gone through like 2 different generations, and we're bringing up new talents every single year. And I don't think we just need to kick out all the old players, because I still think, a Bjergsen and Doublelift can be, performers on the world stage, but you need young talent growing around those players to push them to a level that they aren't being pushed to. So
yeah,
right now, NA is a middling region. We were the 4th best region. Nothing's changed. And I look forward to next year when we do this again, and, Team Liquid goes 3-3. And 100 Thieves goes 2-4, and TSM goes 1-5.
Well, good for Papa Smithy, though.
Yeah,
he turned it around. Okay,
turned it around.
Cool.
Turned it around. 2-4, baby.
Papa. Well done. Good job.
2-4. Yeah, great.
Is Ryoma still on the team?
But we don't know yet. Maybe they pick up Jensen. Who knows? But
let me ask you a question before we move on to our solutions, because there are ways to improve the league. I'm sure that you've heard many of them before, but I do have one thought here. One thing that I am sensing, I'm picking up from the way that the region is discussed, is that it's no longer how close is NA to the top 3 regions. Like, how close is NA to EU, LCK, LPL? That conversation is not happening right now. What's happening is, how close is NA to the wild card region? So we're looking backwards. We're talking about, if the VCS were here, maybe they would have unseated NA, or Unicorns of Love had the opportunity to bolster the CIS. Those are the kind of conversations are having. So what I'd like to know is, how dire, if you were to compare this to previous years, just look back and compare where we are right now as a state of NA to the past. How dire are the conversations, and how dire is the sentiment as compared previously?
I think the fan sentiment, I think it's better than last year, because I think fans see what they last see, right? And the last impression of North America at Worlds 2020 was FlyQuest beating top esports and smashing Unicorns of Love. And that leaves you on a good note, right? Where it's an honorable death. People talk about FlyQuest. They talk about Team Liquid's, almost playoff run, and people just laugh at TSM. And I think for the most part, people are just going to be laughing at TSM, and that's going to be the main takeaway for most fans, just on the surface level going into 2021, where people will just laugh and giggle at TSM and say, NA wasn't supposed to do anything this year anyway. TL and FlyQuest showed that, NA is not a terrible region. They're still the 4th best region. TSM, LOL, what were they doing? But I can tell you, a friend of mine from another region who's at a high position in another, top League of Legends region, he messaged me and he said, when is NA going to get 2 seeds? I feel like they need 2 seeds, because they are going far closer to wild cards than they are to the main 3 regions. And it was something that was like, yeah, like this was right after FlyQuest beat top esports. And it was like, yeah, like the people who are really in the know, the people who are in regions of actual power in the League of Legends hierarchy, they're not scared of North America. They're not scared of North America at all. They might see them as the cute little brother who might send one team to go a bit far. They might make a semifinals, make an international finals. But as a region overall, Europe, China, and South Korea don't really look at North America as a challenger or rival. They look at them as a cute little side. They look at them as like a cute little sideshow. Like it's like, oh, how cute! Like North America, they're gonna spend $400,000 on another big import that's on the way down, and they're not seen as like a real rival. They're seen as like this like afterthought of like, oh, good for you. And that's not what you want to be, especially when you have so much money and, so many eyes on the scene. Like, again, it's not the biggest region, but it's still 2 million plus people playing the game in North America. It still gives a large viewership in North America, tons of sponsorships in North America. It's where the game was made, Arda. This is where we were supposed to bring home the championship. We're like England in soccer, right? Like we're England football. Sorry, European fans. Football. We're like England in football, right? Like
England hasn't won the World Cup since the '60s either. I'm just saying.
In 60 years we'll be talking about this.
Fired now because our producer's English, but
in 60 years we'll be doing the same thing. We'll be like, one day the North American teams will bring home the Summoners Cup where it was made. Like we're the fourth best region, and we're an afterthought. We're a gatekeeper.
Okay, so let's present some, and I'm sure many people watching this have heard many of this before. We have about 10 minutes left in the show, Tyler. So we'll go through. Do you want me to tee up the 5 points and bring them to you, or do you want to bring them up? Okay, I'll tee them up. So here are 5 ways to improve NA League of Legends. The first one on our list is invest in amateur and the college scene. Now, I will tell you, Tyler, and maybe you can expand on this a little bit. I am shocked that League of Legends doesn't have a college scene, much like college football. Because college football, but I mean in terms of popularity and numbers and what we see, the viral nature that college football has, especially in America. I have never seen a rabid fan base like I have seen of a college team. And I'm wondering why that has not translated to that degree in League of Legends. Why is that?
Because it's not the highest level of League of Legends. It's not the brand names, right?
Yeah, but college football isn't either, though.
Well, I think in esports, people are much more drawn to, the fans are much more drawn to the players and teams. Unless you're a TSM and like you make a like actual like foundation and like legacy for people to cheer on, C9, TSM. They just kind of go towards the winners and like the big brand names of like Bjergsen and Doublelift. But I do think investing in this is the first thing. Invest more in the amateur and college scene. Put money forth there. Look for talent in these amateur scenes. Here, pause a thought. Another friend said that North American teams are doing this. We've seen it with 100 Thieves Next, which have already, brought up players like Tenacity, Kenev, Copy, who I think are some of the future generation stars of the North American, LCS. I've heard that more amateur talent is getting signed. More of these organizations are about to sign amateur talent. Give them a reason to grind the game. Give them the necessary resources. These 18, 19, 17-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids, give them some resources to play the game and to be an organization that can help them grow into the next generation of LCS stars instead of relying on the stars of 6 years ago. So it does seem like we're on a good path here. I do think investing more in the college scene also is, again, we shouldn't be telling all these young kids like, hey, just sign like a $50K a year deal and just not go to college. I think college for a lot of these kids, are smart kids who want to go into computer science. We've talked about revenge, want to be a surgeon, like,
or be a doctor, like we just
said. Be a doctor. Like, I think also we can also invest in these colleges who are getting kid scholarships, and like we already have League of Legends scholarships, but like investing more in the college scene and finding more talent there and giving those kids a chance to not only get a degree and go to school, but also have a chance of going into League of Legends when they want to do so and after they graduate, which might be a bit older for some people where, you graduate at 21, 22, when a lot of times if you're China or Korea, you look at a 22-year-old and say, oh, that's way too old. But yeah, I think it's fine.
That is one knock against the college system, right? Because they're already like 18 to 20 years old, right? And by then they're probably already playing in the LCS.
Yeah, but there's diamonds there. But I think growing the college scene is not going to hurt League of Legends at all. As you said, American sports is college, and traditionally it's major in college sports. College football, college basketball are institutions. Like, growing the North American college scene can only be good things ahead for League of Legends as a whole.
And create some great rivalries too, because there's already existing school rivalries. So I hope that happens in the near future. Number 2 is investing more in coaching and development.
Yep.
Now, and that's interesting, because a lot of people are pointing to coaches right now in NA and saying, well, maybe this is where changes should be made.
I don't think we should point to any coaches again. Like, I think kind of saying which coach is great, which coach sucks is kind of short-sighted, especially since we're not in the know. I don't vote for coach of the split just because of this reason of I don't have enough data or really anything other than hearsay from players to see what coach is really the best. But invest more in coaching and development. And I think, and this comes off number one, right, where you can find the best players in the world. You can find these players. You can find these diamonds in the rough, but you have no one to develop them. If you don't have the right coaching staff in place to actually teach them how to play the game correctly or really shepherd them into, into the right mentality, they can go wayward. And I think mentality is a big thing with North American stars. And I've talked to a few, pros and other managers from other teams. And one of the biggest reasons why they knock NA is that the players have the wrong attitude. A lot of them care more about their personal brand than they actually care about winning. They care more about their paycheck than actually getting, wins in a tournament. And I think that starts with how you are as an amateur and how you get signed as a rookie player. And that's instilled in you by the coaching staff and how you're developed. And I'll never forget Coach Kim, one of the most successful coaches in League of Legends history, took Damwon to top 8 at Worlds last year, was the coach of T1 this year when they won their domestic title, was with IG, the head coach of IG when they won the world title in 2018. He was actually in North America, Arda. He was a North American coach on Dignitas back in the day. Do you want to guess how many years Coach Kim stayed in North America, Arda?
Not too many.
He stayed 2 months. He was here 2 months. One of the greatest coaches in League of Legends history. One of the most who has led teams to world titles. Stayed in NA for 2 months. And the reason why he said he could not fit in North America and why he left and why him and Dignitas had a disagreement and they parted ways is because the players didn't listen to Marta. They thought they knew more than him.
Oh my gosh.
And it was more about how he had to be flexible around the players instead of the players being flexible to him. And I think that comes all about mentality, right? We're not instilling the right mentality. We're in Korea, the coaches are heaven and sun. They are given the utmost respect and they listen to their coaches. In North America, a lot of times the teams run the coaches. And it's much more player-driven teams than the coaches actually having control of everything. And that's not the case with every team, but for a lot of teams. And I think having better coaches, coaching staffs, not only a head coach, but having possible positional coaches, which other regions have, having positional coaches, having amateur coaches, having coaches, not just that know the X's and O's of the game, but know how to instill the right mentality in these young players. Because it all starts from the beginning. This attitude change, this attitude of North American players that Coach Kim talked about and a lot of other people tell me about, that starts really from the get-go and starts from the ground floor up, from the down to up. Because look at any sport where a young cocky rookie comes into the New England Patriots locker room, Arda. You know what's going to happen to a young kid who thinks they're bigger than the world? Belichick, and that structure, that foundation that they built over the last 2 decades. You're out, and you're not coming back. And I think we need to see more, not only more investment in the amateur scene and these young players, but the people in charge of developing these young players and putting the right mentality in their personality and just growing them from there. Because you can't have one without the other. You need both to really create the next big stars. Because an example I can bring up is that Chovy, the lovely Chovy, hallelujah, amen. Yep. He was a one-trick player in Korea. He's a one-trick Cassiopeia player. And before CV Max, his head coach from Griffin and now DRX, found him. And Stevie Max has plainly said that when he first found Chovy in solo queue, that Chovy was a moron. He had no clue about the macro game, nothing about wave management. He played only Cassiopeia, but he saw potential in him. And he grew Chovy from that state to now being arguably the best player in the world. And that doesn't just, Chovy didn't just become the best player in the world, Arda. He had someone develop him. And we need more people to develop the next generation of stars in North America. So I think we do have a lot of those people in NA, but we need more, and we need more investment in the amateur scene and those people.
And from domestic to international, our third point is we need to invest in better scouting for import players.
Do I have a story for you, Arda? Do I have a story for you to kind of show you how poor NA scouting can be? So this was a few years ago. I'm not going to name the organization because people would meme them and laugh at them. But one organization imported a South Korean player, as you do in North America. We love our South Korean players, as we should. Los Angeles, big South Korean population, the second biggest outside of Seoul. it's very easy for South Koreans to assimilate to the LCS when compared to Berlin in Europe. So nothing crazy there, right? I had a friend who was talking to the South Korean player who they spoke South Korean, so they were communicating with this player. And it turned out that the South Korean player did not know English at all, not a lick of English. They did not have, a translator there for them. And the South Korean player could not communicate with his team, so he spent every day, he would practice with his team, do his best to get through practice with, pings and basic English. And then he would spend every night in his room by himself because he had no other outlets. And he spent the entire time he was there in North America alone. He felt lonely, he felt isolated, and the team did nothing to help him assimilate. And obviously the player left, and the team did not do very well with the player on the team. And he was just left there and there was no outlets for him. That's terrible scouting, Arda. What kind of situation is that? That's terrible infrastructure. Do you think you're going to win a title with a player who is depressed, lonely, and has no friends and has no way to communicate with the players around him? No. It doesn't matter how good his solo queue rating is. It doesn't matter, oh, hey, you watched some highlight videos of him in the LCK. Whoa, look at those plays he made. Doesn't really matter if you bring him over and he's depressed and alone. He has no way to communicate with his team or have any outlets outside of just watching TV alone in his room. How depressing and sad.
Very sad story. Yeah.
And there's multitude of stories like that where we've had teams import players and the players just don't fit to North American style, and they either get lazy or because of how more open and free the North American style is. They get frustrated and they get mad and they lash out against the North American system. We've seen that against a few players, even Ignar, who did very well at this World Championship. We had a segment early this year on Rift Rewind where Ignar was trolling an NA solo queue and making fun of NA and saying NA lol and making fun of the region. And
the culture part of it is very important. Like people don't realize that it's almost as much of their gameplay and how good they are mechanically, but it's also a chemistry thing. It's not just dealing or working with your players and teammates. It's getting accustomed to being in North America. So 2 more points. Let's get really quick on them. I don't know how this is going to happen, and I'm sure I'm actually shocked it's not the case. Forcing Riot to create a server in Los Angeles for actual practice. Why doesn't this exist?
It did exist, Arda. This was because LA is too far west. We need to make it more central, so they moved to Chicago, which totally screwed over. It's kind of crazy, Arda. The best days of North America League of Legends back in 2014, 2015, 2016. That's when North America had a server in Los Angeles when players could have actual practice in solo queue. It's hilarious how many times you see North American players go to international events and they talk about, oh my God, I could play Lee Sin on 5 ping. They play on 60 ping in LA. Like, you don't know how big of a difference that is when it comes to practice and individual practice when the servers are so out of whack and you're so far away. And if Riot Games is going to insist on their major league being in Los Angeles and not in Chicago, there needs to be a server, especially when you have Valorant, where Valorant comes out. And I was talking to some of the pro players of LCS. I'm like, have you played Valorant? They're like, yeah, it's so great. There's a West Coast server, and I can play on 15 ping. It's amazing.
How is that possible? There's no West Coast server, even if there is one in Chicago. Or why not just make a server for the pros?
Who knows?
Why not just let them have isn't that am I completely off the wall in saying that? Doesn't that seem logical?
It would take Ryan's stance would be, hey, the NA region has 2 million players. Does it really need a West Coast server? We don't want to break up the server already. It's not big enough to have 2 servers. Like EU has the European West and European West server, and they're split in half because both of those regions have, I believe, 4 million and 2.5 million respectively, so 6 million overall or so. Where NA is 2 million, and you would be splitting, at best 1 million, 1 million. So
we need a West Coast server. We need a West Coast server, or we're moving the LCS to Chicago.
Why not? Because I really do think
we're moving. Congratulations, Windy City. You got the LCS.
If that happened, I don't think the play. Obviously the players love living in LA. LA is a pretty great city. But if they could actually practice on actual good ping, they might be even happier. So,
all right, last one is don't be afraid to fail. I agree with this one 100%. If we have to tear down to tear back up, long term, everybody should be in favor of that. Everyone should want that to happen for the long-term benefit of the region. If the region gets to the complete basement where people are even saying it's worse than a wild card team, but then let it grow organically, and in 5 to 10 years it becomes a top region again, but it stays a top region with everything in place. That's what you want more than anything.
Yeah. Especially, and I want to say especially for the lower rung teams. If you are a team at the low bottom, the LCS totem pole, don't be afraid to bring out a roster that might suck. Do not be afraid to start a inexperienced teenage roster. Do not try to don't try to go to 6-18 or 6-10, right? Don't try to be that bubble team like we've talked about, how that's the worst place you want to be. Don't try to prop up your team with, some maybe better import players for a season or two who have already hit their ceiling than trying to suck for a year or two with players that could develop into all-stars. Don't be afraid to fail, especially in a franchise league, Arda. In a franchise league where there's no relegation. If there is relegation, yes, to try to win at all costs. But you're allowed to fail in this franchise system. The only way you get kicked out is if you finish, I believe, at you're the last place team for 2 or 3 years in a row, and that's a maybe you might get kicked out.
Low probability.
Low probability if you have the money and you have the stature and you are actually invested in the scene. Please, these lower rung teams, stop trying to be a bubble playoff team who gets knocked out by, a TSM or Team Liquid in the round 1, get 3-0'd. Be more like Golden Guardians. Take some chances. Play a closer. Play, try to build a team that has, some young players. Play with FBI. Take some chances. Take some chances on some young talent. Some Turkish, Australian, New Zealand talent. Take some talent. Take some gambles on some NA talent for that. I want these lower teams to experiment more. And sure, if 5 teams experiment with young, undeveloped rosters, 4 of them might fall on their face, and maybe 1 or 2 of those players will have any worth a year from now. But one of those teams, I guarantee you, is going to impress and be a lot better than anyone thought they could be. And for that one team, that's going to be worth it. And I think that model overall, in the long run, is far better than trying to, bandage your roster with import players who are at the end of the line, who might get you, 5 or 6 wins, but are never going to win you a championship.
And amen.
And amen.
And amen. All right. For the last time on Wake Up Worlds, I will ask this question that we've been asking all series long. If you've been with us since the beginning, you know what's coming. And if you're with us for the first time, get ready, buckle up. Every show we ask where Tyler, our dear friend, my good buddy, where his optimism is as it pertains to the region we just spoke of and repaired. We just booked the territory, basically. Now we're going to find out for the last time, as NA has now exited Worlds completely, where is his NA optimism? So, Tyler, you were off the chart, literally, in the wrong way the last time we asked you this question. Where could you be now?
Oh, man. I was in the Shadow Realm last episode. Just throw up the graph. Just throw up the chart. I'm on fire, Arda. I'm literally Fion on fire. I have cratered.
On fire.
I have cratered, and I am on fire, and I'm burning, and it doesn't feel so great, Arda. From the tippy top of Team Liquid. Remember those days, Arda? Back in plays when Team Liquid were so businesslike and took care of business and looked so swell, to my optimism at the utmost high as it slowly dipped down and then cratered into what it is now, a dumpster fire as I burn, Fion on fire. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Goodbye, NA Optimism charts.
I want to give a shout out really quick to Archie Namigo, and I'm going to post the tweet in chat because he had a good idea where your optimism chart craters, but then it goes back to 10 for Worlds 2021. So you start at a 10 for next year's Worlds, which is hilarious. Well, what do we do now, man? I mean, I guess that's it for the charts.
Oh, no, Arda. There always must be a chart. A chart must always rule the land, Arda. The next, oh man, you know where it's coming. I'm a, North America was a phase, Arda. I'm born in North America, but I like other regions. I write about StarCraft, South Korea. I was always a South Korean guy back in the day, SKT. I write about Faker far more than I do about these chumps in North America. I'm really a South Korean guy, and I think my next chart, a true charts, is for not a team, not for a region, but for one man, the greatest player at Worlds 2020. Throw up the new chart, producer, the Chovy optimism chart, baby. We're back. We have revived. We are back online. The North American chart, I do not even remember those days. That was so long ago, Arda. NA's done. We are onto a new future. Chovy, the one lord above all. The man who can outlane anybody, the CS master, a man who can play any champion in the book and excel at each and every one. Look at that, Arda. I am rooting for a winner, Arda. This is what true winning looks like. We're at a 10, baby. We're at a 10, and we're going to the top. The Summoners Cup will soon be in the hands of all us loyalists at the Church of Chovy.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, Chovy is here.
Oh, I can't wait to see where this one goes.
Arda, I have a question. I was too much. I was preparing for the show. Who does Chovy play in the first round of playoffs?
Chovy plays. Oh boy, Chovy.
Does he play Fnatic?
No, he does not play Fnatic. He doesn't play Suning. He doesn't play JD Gaming. He doesn't play G2. He plays Damwon, my friend.
Oh. It's Are you sure that's right? Damwon.
I'm hearing the Jeopardy music in my head.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure it's Damwon? Are you sure? Damwon.
Yeah. I think it was Ning that had the paper in his hands.
You mean the Damwon who 3-0'd DRX a month ago? That Damwon?
That is that Damwon. Yeah, that's that Damwon.
Oh.
They run roughshod on the LCK. They dumpstered pretty much every team, including DRX in the final. Yeah, that's that same team. That same team. You're at a 10, though. You're at a 10. You are at a 10.
Yeah, I'm I'm excited. When's that game, Arda? When's that game? Is it soon?
So we're gonna what we're gonna do is on that note, as we wrap things up here on the show, we're gonna take a couple days break, but we're gonna be back on Wednesday. The quarterfinals begin on Thursday, but we're gonna have a quarterfinal preview show where we go through every matchup at length. On Wednesday. That's going to be an 11 a.m. Eastern start. So we're going to be on every day after each quarterfinal matchup has concluded, but we're going to begin Wake Up Worlds on Wednesday. Last thing I'm going to ask you, Tyler, is very, very top level, 30 seconds or less. Just give me your excitement for the quarterfinal matchups.
The group stage was pretty bad. I'll stand by that. I think the group stages were, for the most part, pretty underwhelming after a really good play-in stage. But the good thing about having a crappy group stage means you have 8 excellent, amazing teams in the playoffs, and we are primed for one of the best playoff stages in World's history. And we're almost guaranteed a cross-regional final, unless it's G2 versus Fnatic. We have G2 versus all the Korean teams on the bottom side of the bracket, and Fnatic versus all the Chinese teams at the top side of the bracket. The bracket looks amazing. I'm still looking at Damwon versus, it's Damwon versus DRX. Okay. We might need to change that chart for next episode, guys. We can put Canyon's face on there. Canyon optimism
the night
chart.
Optimism chart. Let's go.
We might that chart might need a bit of changing for the next episode, but it looks like a really good bracket, and I think we're going to see a lot of really good games. My upset special pick, if there is an upset to be had, I do think Fnatic does have a chance against TES, especially if Selfmade's on his best day. I do think he is a better hard carry jungler than Karsa. I want to see more from Knight. I don't think Knight had a very impressive group stage. But yes, Fnatic, I do think G2 takes care of business against Gen G, and I do think we're going to get that spicy Damwon versus G2 semifinal that I think everyone wants to see. So Very excited for the playoffs. Not so excited about my optimism chart. Might need to change it again. We'll see you for the next episode.
It'll stay for now, and our final thought is going to be enjoy the rest, everybody. Don't forget, we're back on Wednesday with a full quarterfinal preview. We're going to go match by match and dive into details on what to expect as we now get to the knockout stage of the 2020 League of Legends World Championship. Thank you so much for joining us up until now. Continue on with us until a world champion is crowned. Good vibes and acts of kindness, everybody. We'll see you on Wednesday. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. I might need to actually admit, really seriously, I might need a cannon chart. Cannon chart?
Alrighty.